In today's webinar, we will be discussing IC Realtime's TAA line. This is going to be a line of TAA compliant Korean manufactured cameras. My name is Michael Caballero. I'm the product specialist and training manager here at IC Realtime. And let's get started. Right now, this TAA line is a truncated line. So do keep in mind by the end of the year, or probably a little bit after that, our full product lineup will transition into full Korean manufacturing. But we wanted to make you aware of some of the line that we do have available as of now. So a little bit about this TAA line. I'm going direct from our website here. So if you want to review any of this, you can go straight to icrealtime.com. Again, it's going to be our TAA line. It's going to allow you to offer different options and alternative using Korean made gear. So let's talk about that for a second. The reason that we wanted to transition from Chinese manufacturing to Korean manufacturing, of course, is going to be the stigma that's been going around with Chinese manufacturing when it comes to NDAA ban, the ban on Chinese manufacturers, and then of course just the stigma of Chinese manufacturing and the limitations therein, the ability for intellectual property theft. We're all aware of the news in the last year and a half to 2 years about what's been going on with issues between China and America in terms of, again, things like IP theft, intellectual property theft, and things of that nature, backdoor intrusions into Chinese-made gear. So it's something that we wanted to move away from. And what we did was we've had a Korean manufacturer for years that developed many of our ELIP offerings. And that was really where we were able to make a real good transition into the Korean manufacturing. As you can see there, Matt Saylor, one of his quotes, IC Realtime understands the importance of compliance and potential impact it has on your business. Now, this isn't NDAA qualified just yet. It is TAA qualified, as well as having FIPS qualifications as well. So what that means is you don't want to just run and start installing these in government installations. However, most municipalities have a concern with Chinese manufacturing. A lot of residential installs have issues with Chinese manufacturing at this point. And then you've got many businesses that have issues. Just to protect their intellectual properties, they do have issues with Chinese manufacturing. And that's really where we wanted to start with TAA compliancy, addressing that the equipment is 100% manufactured in China. This was extremely important to us. What was also important to us was that we maintain a lot of the feature sets that you've become used to with IC Realtime hardware and pricing. This is still going to be competitively priced with a lot of our other cameras that were sourced from China. So don't think that you're going to pay some exorbitant amount just because we are now manufacturing in Korea. There may be a slight uptick just because, with the manufacturer, we're doing a lot more with them. But as we move more of our line over to the Korean line, of course, those other costs are going to drop down quite a bit. So again, not only are you available to offer client options that are not prohibitive to information and meet TA compliance, but the simple confidence knowing it's made in Korea is a breath of fresh air. As a service and equipment provider, TAA puts the responsibility on the dealer to ensure that the equipment procedure is stable and meets these guidelines. Unlike broad offerings from the industry, the TAA series takes privacy and vulnerability with the utmost priority. So let's talk about that for a second. So as you can see here, made in Korea, high quality assurance, competitively priced, and then fortified against vulnerabilities. So we've introduced a much higher level of encryption, which is perfect forward secrecy, as well as 128-bit encryption. And these are all standards to meet when you're utilizing FIPS compliancy. That FIPS compliancy is a government compliancy. That means that these recorders and these cameras are hardened against intrusions. So these are you're not going to see the vulnerabilities here that you would see in a lot of other cameras from a lot of other manufacturers, especially something like a Hikvision, which we all know with the history behind Hikvision, what the issues were with their backdoor vulnerabilities. If any of you are familiar with IPVM, you may know that they've done multiple reports on the backdoor vulnerabilities on Hikvision cameras. So we wanted to make sure that we were completely fortified. So if you've already received any of our recorders, you're probably going to recognize that we've introduced two-step verification into our recorders and IP cameras, 8-character minimum passwords for all our recorders, and those are forced 8 minimum password limitations on our cameras and recorders. We're using digest authentication as well. This actually even brought our partners up to digest authentication. Something like Savant, our partnership with Savant, they were still using basic authentication on a lot of their hardware. And to work with our IC real-time cameras and recorders, that required that they come up to a digest authentication, which is a much higher level of authentication to integrate with our cameras and our recorders. We assisted them with bringing up all of their hardware to digest authentication, so that way the functionality there would be seamless. So we're doing a lot in terms of making sure that our recorders and our cameras are hardened from any kind of intrusions, any kind of backdoor intrusions that may put any of you guys or our potential end users at risk. You've also seen the issues that have come up with Ring and Nest cameras and having those vulnerabilities as well when it comes to having people get into those cameras and speak through those microphones. We've all seen that on the news, and that's where those two-step verifications come into play here with IC Realtime. You know, we want to make sure that we have that in place because we don't want to have those kinds of issues that Ring and Nest had as well. So again, all the reason why some of these features are extremely, extremely important. So next, what we'll do is that we'll go through some of the feature sets on some of the cameras that we've introduced in the truncated line here, and some of the features we have here. So we're still going to have your 10-year warranty with our TAA line. They're all UL listed, just like all of our cameras have been previously. You're going to see H.265 compression in all of these devices. No plug-in interfaces on all of our cameras and recorders. Of course, the integration is going to be exactly the same as it was previously, and that Starvis image sensor, which is going to give you Starlight functionality. If you're not familiar with that, and you may be confused, because something we're working on our website is lining everything up. Starlight and Starvis are one and the same. Starvis being the Sony manufactured name of that CMOS sensor or image sensor, and then Starvis being our terminology for that functionality. If you ever get confused, why do some cameras say Starvis, why some say Starlight, that's going to be cleared up on our website. Basically, anything that is Starvis is Starlight, and that's going to give you that color production at nighttime, color image production at nighttime. So that's something that is still going to remain in all of our cameras here. A few cameras to mention here, and some that are going to be coming soon. 4 megapixel motorized dome camera, IPFX D40V IRW, great varifocal lens camera at 4 megapixel in both bullet and dome. You see the IPFX D40V IRW, and then you have your IPEL P2045 IRW. That's going to be a 45 times optical zoom PTZ with auto tracking. We do have some fixed lens options as well here. So you're going to see there the 2 megapixel Starvis dome. That's going to be the IPMX D20F IRW and the IPMX D40F IRW. So 2 megapixel and 4 megapixel domes. You're going to see also bullets as well, mid-sized bullets, IPMX B20F IRW and IPMX B40F IRW. So again, 4 megapixel, 2 megapixel in bullet and dome. And then our turret camera, the IPMX E20F IRW and E40F IRW. So 2 and 4 megapixel in turret. We know that a lot of you do love your turret style cameras. It makes it really easy as opposed to dome cameras to configure those. You don't have to open your lens up. There's separation between the lens and the IRs that you don't have to put at risk. Opening that cameras up for adjustment, you can adjust those cameras on the exterior. A few more features that you can come to expect with the TAA line that you've already had with our previous lines. All of our cameras do come with Smart IR. If you're not familiar with that, Smart IR is going to give you the ability to adjust the intensity of those IRs. Actually, the cameras auto adjust the intensity of those IRs, and then true wide dynamic range, which is going to give you great contrast, especially if you have a camera that is watching a front door. So that's something that's going to be fantastic. That'll give you that contrast between exterior lighting and interior lighting when someone's walking through a threshold. And again, just to reiterate, so now we have our recorders, and the 2 first recorders that are going to be introduced into this line or already introduced into this line. And keep in mind, anything that does not indicate coming soon is already here. So we already have most of this truncated line already in-house, ready to be shipped, manufactured from Korea. The NVR MX08 PoE and MX16 PoE, 1U 4K. So now these are recorders that have replaced our NVR 708 and 716 NS. Something a little bit different from these is that now they have 4K video outputs as opposed to the 708 and 716 NS that only had 1080p video output, even though they supported up to 8 megapixel cameras. Then coming soon, we have our NVR EL128 4U 12 megapixel. So this is going to be one of our enterprise level machines like you've come to expect with that Korean manufacturing. H.265 compression, which is going to be huge. With H.265 compression, and actually many of our cameras and recorders support H.265 Plus as well. That's going to be a huge reduction in bandwidth consumption as well as hard drive consumption. You're looking at up to 20 to 30% reduction in bandwidth and hard drive consumption. So what that means is that your video is not going to consume as much hard drive space or as much bandwidth. You can add higher resolution cameras to our more standard recorders that you could previously using H.264 compression. When it comes to our NVR EL128, you're looking at 384 megabits of throughput, 4 gigabit dynamic NIC cards, of course, built-in analytics on both those recorders, best-in-class integration, high PoE capable, redundant power supplies, and UL listed. So let's go ahead and transition into some of these cameras and recorders and take a look at some of those specs. We'll start out with the higher spec NVR MX16 PoE 1U 4K1. So this is, again, a 1U machine, allows for up to 2 hard drives, 6 terabytes each. But do keep in mind here with 200 megabits of throughput, that's going to allow you to really throw pretty much 16.8 megapixels at this machine. And as long as you're running that in H.265, and to go even further with this, if you drop your frame rate from 30 frames to 15 frames on your cameras, this is going to allow you to add all the cameras you need at the resolutions that you need to. And these are great for your residential installs. We are coming out with a few other recorders in this 1U range, but that will be rack mountable. That won't require rack ears. At this point, these recorders do require rack ears to be rack mountable. So that's something to keep in mind there. These are very much like our 708NS or 716NS, but again, Korean manufacturing here. So great entry level recorder that allows for H.265 compression with that 200 megabits of throughput and up to 12 terabytes of storage. With H.265 and 15 frames per second will give you more than 30 days of storage. So next we have our IPMX B20V IR. That's in bullet and dome. So this is a 2 megapixel fixed lens, 3.6 millimeter with 100 feet of smart IR, 2 megapixel, 60 frames per second with that Starbucks chipset. So even though these are small form factor cameras at 2 megapixel, you're still getting lots of packed in features here. This camera does support H.265 and H.265 Plus and is PoE capable. Next, we have our extremely popular IPFX B and D40V IRW2, 4 megapixel indoor-outdoor bullet and dome cameras with a varifocal 2.7 to 13.5 millimeter varifocal lens camera, 197 feet of smart IR, and PoE capable, of course, made in Korea, 12 volt DC or PoE with a max wattage of 9.8 watts. Again, H.265 Plus compression and H.265 compression. And these cameras give you 1 channel audio in and 1 channel audio out on the pigtail here. So what that means is you can utilize these cameras. You can utilize these cameras with a powered microphone or a powered speaker if you want to communicate through the mobile application or PC and Mac application. And then here we have our IPEL P2045 XIRW1. Now we have been focusing more on 2 megapixel PTZs and 4 megapixel PTZs. We do have a couple of standouts at 8 megapixel, but realistically, there's no need for such high resolution when you have optical zoom, and that's what these PTZs give you. With 45 optical zoom, you're looking at over 2 miles of distance with that optical zoom. Of course, Sony Starvis CMOS sensors in there as well. Audio, again, 1 channel in, 1 channel out on that pigtail. So that means you're going to be able to have that audio powered microphone, powered speaker, IVS functionality here with IVS tracking. I will tell you with our cameras and with almost any camera industry, when it comes to analytics and IVS tracking, that you're going to want to make sure that you do have the height for this, generally about 20 to 24 feet in height at the minimum to have that functional IVS tracking. So that's something to keep in mind there. But once you have that height, this thing will track any object to within the PTZ's range of motion, lock onto that object for as long as you need to. And with our IC Realtime recorders, does have that PTZ activation where if you have a fixed lens camera, you do have the ability to have this camera move to that fixed lens camera's position to double that coverage using that smart functionality. Maximum IR length here is 1,804 feet. So that's 300 feet longer than our 1,500 foot laser IR that you guys guys came to expect from the 2400L, but not having to use that laser IR brings us in at a fantastic price point. And lastly is going to be our IPFX turret camera, IPMX E20F IRW1. So great 2 megapixel fixed lens, 3.6 millimeter with 98 feet of IR, H.265 and H.265 plus, IVS functionality as well, along with one channel audio in and one channel audio out, as I mentioned, for powered speakers and microphones. So this is a fantastic small form factor dome camera, turret dome. People really love these cameras. These are great for interior installs. They're also fantastic for exterior installs. A lot of people may scoff at the size of these cameras, but we pack in a lot of technology when it comes to these cameras here. And of course, most of these cameras do have micro SD storage as well, so something you can utilize there. So again, fantastic lineup for our Korean lineup, and do keep in mind that by the end of the year, or maybe by first or second quarter of 2021, you'll see our entire line will transition over to the Korean manufacturing, and we will have nothing manufactured out of China.